I just want to welcome all you new faces as well as some veterans here. I recognize some of your names, so good to see you again. Hope you're doing well. So, little things to go over before we kick tonight off. We're going to be having two presenters tonight, Mr. Jeremy Nix as well as Mr. Nhan Lam. So, if you have any questions for any of them throughout the event tonight, you can go ahead and type them in the chat during the presentation. And make sure you specify who the question is for, or if it's just a generalized question, that's fine too. And yeah, you can go ahead and type them in the chat throughout the presentation, and we're going to go ahead and get to them in the order that they were received in. So without further ado, I'm going to transfer it over to the man himself, Mr. Nhan Lam.
All right, thank you very much, Nicholas. Can you hear me clearly?
Yep, I sure can.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much for joining us this evening. This is the month of May, and the fifth, the fifth presentation that we're having for a monthly meetup. First of all, I hope that everyone's out there staying safe and staying healthy and following all the guidelines to remain healthy during this COVID crisis. But regardless of what's going on with the pandemic and the national health crisis, we are still continuing business as usual with a couple of adjustments. Instead of meeting in a hotel space, we're actually meeting virtually so we can continue business regardless of what's going on. So every month, for those who are new and joining us for the very first time, we have a meetup every single month on the second Wednesday. And every month it has a different topic. So in the month of January, we actually talk about how to market for a deal. And in February, we talk about how to qualify and negotiate. In March, we talk about how to wholesale. Last month, we talked about how to build your real estate dream team. And today, we're actually going to talk about how to estimate a renovation, okay? And for those who don't know me, my name is Nhan. I'm the founder of Fortune Homes. We've been doing real estate investing for the last 10 years or so on different capacities between rentals and land development, condo conversions, fix and flips, and so forth. We've done it all right? So I have a vast experience and have built a great team across the last decade to become very successful. My background before real estate was in engineering, and I actually started off part-time while I was still working my full-time job as an IT project manager with the federal government. And with that, guys, within 2.5 years, I was able to do my real estate deals and finish 12 fix and flips. And with those 12 fix and flips, was able to replace my income and have enough money set aside for be able to comfortably retire from my job, and having been fighting traffic on Interstate 66 or the Beltway since then. But even with this pandemic, not a lot of people are fighting traffic nowadays. So I guess I feel a little, I feel part of the pack now. But anyways, but we want to, one of the purposes of having a monthly event like this is to reach out back to you guys and see what we can do to help you grow your real estate business. And that's why we have these events for free. We want to be able to pay it forward and give you guys some good information, so that way you can go out there and be successful in real estate investing as well, following a system that's been proven to work. So let's go ahead and get started, okay? First of all, how to estimate a renovation. Why is this topic important? As a fix and flipper or even a buy and hold person, eventually in any piece of real estate, you're going to need to do repairs. You're going to need to do maintenance, and also we need to do full gut renovations, get ready for the property to sell. So whatever that may be, you want to have the skill of how to estimate a renovation, so that way when you work with a contractor, you know for a fact you're not going to get ripped off. And mind you guys, real estate in any capacity is and can be a very cutthroat business, and there's a lot of bad people out there. But you know what? There's bad people in anything, okay? And you want to be smart enough to know what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong, so that way you don't end up being victims of a contractor who potentially will rip you off and say, hey, listen, you need to do this, you need to do that, but really you don't need to do that. And they're trying to make a quick dollar just because they're adding new scope to give you new things to do, but you don't really need it, okay? So this is going to be very important, a skill to know. That way you can validate your information with your contractor that you plan to use, and you know for a fact that you're in the ballpark and it's not something really outlandish, okay? So let's go ahead and go through our slides real quick, okay? First slide, why is this skill important? Well, first of all, because we live in a very densely populated area in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, which includes not only D.C., but also Northern Virginia and Maryland, if you live in any part of the D.C. metropolitan area, you know for a fact it can take some time to go across the Beltway just to see a property. So what you want to do is have the ability to estimate a renovation before you even go there, and you only go to the actual property and invest time to actually do a physical site visit once you've already negotiated the deal to where it's in the ballpark of where you need to buy it at and what the seller is willing to sell it at. Okay, this is the only way that you can be able to make offers while you're at home without seeing it, and also save some time. See, when I first started, it took me a long time to get my first deal because I literally went to almost every single property to see it while I was working on my full-time job. It nearly killed me. On top of that, my wife was pregnant, all right, and we were about to deliver a baby in the midst of all that. It was really tough, and I realized I had to create a system that is designed for part-time people to be successful, so that way I can still work my job, pay my bills, while adjusting my entrepreneur goals to succeed in real estate so I can eventually replace my job. Obviously, I can't just quit my job and do real estate right away because I still have bills to pay. So I had to transition. There was a transition period for me to go from part-time to full-time. So I had to be able to make offers while I'm at home without seeing the property, and to be able to see what kind of dialogue I can have with the seller or the seller's agent to see if I'm in the ballpark. And if so, that's great. Now it's time to go see the property with a contractor, okay? You can do this part-time. You don't want to burn out your contractor. See, what I've learned is there's a lot of newbies out there. Once they meet one of our contractors or any contractor in general, they end up inviting them to every property visit. And what's going to happen is that contractor is going to get burnt out. They're going to realize that you're a newbie and not going to give them any projects in the future because you have no idea what you're doing. So what you want to do is value your contractor's time, and then in return, they're going to value your time, okay? You only want to go to see the property with your contractor if you're close to a deal, so that way you can verify your number to make sure it's correct. So don't burn out your contractors. And lastly, you want to focus on high value activity, okay? Driving around the Beltway looking at property is not a high value activity, so you want to do a little of that, as little of that as possible, okay? All right, and then you want to make sure that the pricing is fair from contractors. We mentioned that there are always good and bad people in anything, especially in contracting. So if you have a ballpark number and you can estimate it sight unseen, and then the contractor comes back with a number that's really out there and way higher than what you originally estimated, then that's called a red flag. You want to go ahead and ask, well, why is this? Why is that? And then let them answer to see if they have a good answer for that. If so, well, that may be true, but if they're just making stuff up and you can tell that they're making stuff up, then that's something you can consider of using a different contractor, because you want to have someone on your team who's not going to rip you off and wants to build a long-term relationship with you to help you grow your business. Okay. Also, you can use it as a marketing tool if you're planning to do wholesaling. Now, if you've never done a fix and flip before or have no intention of doing one, then you can start wholesaling deals, but use this as a guide to say, hey, listen, I'm going to sell my wholesale deal at this price. Here's my renovation estimate. Here's the ARV. You don't really need a contractor's estimate to put a renovation estimate. You can put a ballpark figure based on the skills we'll go through tonight. Okay. All right, so in order to do a renovation estimate sight unseen, you got to first have a couple of details about the property. And all these things, by the way, that I have here listed, you can find on public records on the county website wherever the property sits. Obviously, for very obvious reasons, you want to see the number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, all right, and the total square footage of the house, both finished and unfinished. So if the basement is unfinished, then you know for a fact that you may want to finish that space to be able to increase the value. Of course, you want to know the year built and if it was ever updated, and also the layout of the floor plan. So it was built in the 50s. You want to see if they actually done anything in the past that opened up walls or did any modernization across the years they've owned the house. Okay, so you want to also decide, which counties you plan to do business in, and whatever counties and city jurisdiction that you plan to do so, you want to go ahead and bookmark the county websites that has to do with real estate tax assessment onto your computer. So that way you can quickly go to those websites, type in the property address, and get information about that property right away. And you can go ahead and see how you can use the information to do a renovation estimate without looking at the property. Okay, and also you want to understand your exit strategy. Once you look at the property, are you planning to do a fix and flip? Are you planning to do a rental? Are you planning to do a wholesale? Whatever it may be, you want to know the exit strategy so you know exactly how to analyze the deal once you have a renovation estimate sight unseen. Okay, so let's say right now you haven't decided on what to do with it, and you want to go ahead and take a look at you may want to rent the house out, or you may want to sell the house. It depends on what you get out of it. Okay, well, you guys know that that's going to be two different analysis. So if the property is in big disrepair, then what you're going to do is decide what kind of materials grade you're going to put in there once you decide if it's going to be a buy and hold or if it's going to be a fix and flip. Okay, so for example, for kitchen cabinets, the materials that you're going to use are going to be standard white cabinets or some kind of builder grade type things, and nothing custom designed or nothing too expensive. Okay, the reason why, we all know we have rental properties that tenants never take care of the property as a homeowner would because they don't own it. That doesn't mean they're going to tear it apart. It just means they're not going to take care of it as well as an owner would. Okay, so therefore, you don't need to put expensive stuff into the rental, and you want to put standard things in there, rental grade, that if it is damaged, it is not too expensive to get it replaced. Now, when it comes to countertops, if it's a rental grade, then you might want to consider putting Corian or Formica onto the countertops, whereas if it's a resale, you plan to sell the property for profit, you may want to consider putting granite or marble, or even in some places in DC or North Arlington where things are very expensive, you might want to consider quartz. Okay, so those are very very high-end things, but you want to choose the materials based on what's in that neighborhood and what will sell for a top dollar. Next, for appliances, if it's rental grade, obviously you don't want to invest too much there. If the appliances are already in good working order, but it's used, that's fine, leave it there. But if it's not working, then you obviously need to get it replaced. So as a landlord, you can provide a working appliance set, whether it be the refrigerator, the dishwasher, the stove, or whatnot. Okay, they can be the white or black appliance kit. Again, it doesn't have to be brand new. It could be used, but it has to be in working order for the tenants to use. Whereas resale grade, you definitely want to change that appliance set up and replace it to a brand new set of stainless steel appliances, so that way you can sell it much faster. With regards to flooring, if it's standard carpets, you can put standard carpet anywhere you can. But if there was some kind of wood flooring there, you don't need to change the hardwood. Hardwood is more expensive. You can actually change it to some kind of vinyl or laminate. But the material cost is much cheaper and the installation is much easier. So therefore, your labor cost will be much lower. Whether it's resale grade, you may want to consider hardwood. If it's the existing hardwood, you can refinish that. Or if you have the bathrooms or the kitchen, you can choose some kind of ceramic tile or custom tile design, such as porcelain or some kind of other marble that you want to put in there to make it look really good. Plumbing fixtures for rental grade, obviously something standard and making sure it's working order. Resale grade, you want to use something that's brushed nickel or bronze, so that way it looks good and there's no fingerprints. I love brushed nickel and bronze because if you hold on to the actual handle of a faucet, your fingerprints will not be left behind because the brushed nickel doesn't have any, you can't really see the fingerprints. Okay. In addition to that, for bathroom showers, if it's a rental grade, you can use a standard mold or some kind of plastic that people can use. And then for resale grade, you can use a custom tile design. Okay, so let's go through a couple of pictures here so that way you guys know what I'm talking about. All right, first of all, here's a kitchen that can be used as a rental. Okay, so you can see with my mouse that these are very standard handles. They're not custom handles. They're not 42-inch cabinets. They look like 36-inch cabinets or something less, and they're not going all the way to the ceiling. Okay, so nothing very fancy. You see that there's not even a lazy Susan here. Okay, you can also tell that the sinks over here are not deep sinks, even though they're double sinks. And my point of advice is, depending on the county, if you're going to be owning a rental, I suggest you install a sink with no garbage disposal, because the garbage disposal is probably your number one maintenance issue if someone puts something wrong down the garbage disposal and now it's not working, and they're going to have to call your property manager to go ahead and get that repaired or fixed. It's going to cost you a lot of money to have a garbage disposal unit. So if you're going to do a rental, I recommend just having a sink. You don't really need a garbage disposal unit, but if you're selling the property, definitely have a garbage disposal unit. Okay, you can tell the appliance set here is all white. It's not fancy. And also the countertops looks like it's Formica or Corium. Okay, and there is no backsplash. Okay, there's no need for a backsplash in a rental. Whereas a resale grade, all right, about the same size kitchen, a little bit bigger, but you can tell the appliance set here is stainless steel. You have a glass backsplash here to make it look very nice. Now you can't really see because of the sunlight, but this is granite countertops that blends very well and contrasts well with the flooring. Okay, there's a little grayish color that blends very well with the flooring and also the countertops. You can also see there's a lazy Susan back here. All right. So lazy Susans are not hard to install. You can install them once you replace all the cabinets, and you can tell that these cabinets are 42-inch cabinets going all the way to the ceiling, and also have crown molding on top that makes it look very nice. In addition to that, you can tell that the knobs are custom. All right, you have the doors, they have a regular knob, whereas the drawers have a handle. Okay, so we go to a little bit of attention to detail here to make it look good and alternate the knobs between a knob or a drawer if it's a door or a drawer. Okay. Also, the hardware behind the actual doors and the drawers is soft close. So that means when you slam the drawer, it's not going to bounce back at you. It's actually going to literally close really softly, and you will not damage the actual drawer. Okay, so that's really good. And also, the recessed lighting and pendant lightings are installed. These are all resale grade type material. Okay. So here's the difference with regards to bathroom, the difference between a rental grade and resale grade. All right. So here's a rental grade. You have a little mold, a plastic mold here. It's very cheap to install and not hard to install. So it's very cheap. And then you have a resale grade where you have marble tiles with a nice design and also porcelain flooring that contrasts well. So same size bathroom, but one's obviously a rental grade and one's resale grade. Okay. All right, so let's go through some numbers real quick, okay? Here's how you estimate a renovation before you bring your contractor to the actual site. So all these numbers, by the way, are going to assume that you're using a general contractor. A general contractor is someone who manages all the trades. So it's plumbing, electrical, mechanical, and carpentry and building. All those things are going to be managed by one person, and you will not have to manage every single person that has to do work on your property. So these numbers are going to be based on using a general contractor, which is more expensive than if you had managed it yourself, okay? But you want to do that so that way you can focus your time on finding the next deal. So if you're only going to fix what's broken, all right, and it's going to be a rental property and everything's in good working order, but you want to fix what's broken, you want to budget about $15 per square foot. So again, you're going to the county website, you find out the size of the property. So let's say it's 1,000 square feet for the townhouse or the house. Now you can use that 1,000 square feet, multiply by $15 per square foot. Your estimate to fix what's broken is roughly $15,000 for that project, okay? Now, we have different rehab levels that we're going to talk about. Let's talk about simple rehab, all right? A simple rehab is when you need to do a complete remodel of the home with everything in the same location. So if you have the refrigerator, that's going back in the same exact location. The dishwasher, same exact location, all right, and so forth. Everything goes back in the same location, including the toilets, the tubs, and the vanity, okay? This budget also includes one big ticket item, such as a new roof or maybe even the HVAC. You have to definitely change one of them at some point in time. You can choose one of them as including this estimate. Now, if it's going to be a rental grade, it's $23 per square foot. If it's a resale grade, it's going to be $30 per square foot, okay? So if you have a Rambler, let's say in Falls Church, and the total square footage is 2,000 square feet, 2,000 square feet times 30 square feet, that's a resale grade, will be $60,000 that you'll need to budget for a simple rehab, okay? The next category is a minor rehab. Now, this includes everything in a simple rehab, but it will allow you for an additional budget to move some walls around, so that way you can have an open concept and allow you to relocate certain things that don't make sense back, that where they are right now. So sometimes the refrigerator, the stove, and the sink and everything is not making sense of where it is. So you need to relocate that into a suitable location. This will allow you, this budget will allow you to relocate the electrical and the plumbing to move those appliances around, so that way you can move those walls and make an open concept. All right, so a rental grade, $37 per square foot, and resale grade is $44 per square foot, okay? And last but not least is major rehab. A major rehab includes everything in the minor rehab, but also includes for major floor plan change, allowing you to replace most of the electrical and most likely the electrical panel as well, and also all the plumbing and adding more things. This allows for a lot of things to be relocated. So for example, if your kitchen is in the basement, and it shouldn't be in the basement, and we've seen kitchens in the basement for whatever reason, we need to move it up to the main level, then this budget allows you to move those things, okay? If you have really odd things where you have to do a complete floor plan change, like the entrance of the front door leads into a bedroom, that doesn't make sense, okay? So you need to go ahead and readjust the floor plan to make sure things make sense, and this budget here will allow you to do that. So $51 per square foot for rental grade and $58 per square foot for a resale grade, okay? So let's go through a couple of examples when it comes to pictures. So this is the same picture we saw earlier with that one kitchen, but this is an example of a simple rehab. This is before and after, all right? This is the kitchen before, where you see it's very old appliances that doesn't even match. You know, the dishwasher was cream color, the stove is black and white, and then you have the refrigerator is white. And then you have the range is like a beige cream color as well. So nothing matches, okay? The countertops are damaged. The actual cabinets are okay, but they're not very nice. And also they have the vinyl flooring that's coming up. So when you step on it, you actually hurt your feet if you go in there bare feet. So we actually treated this townhouse as a resale, as a fix and flip. So we decided to change out all the materials and put new things in there with countertops and also new cabinets and such. Okay. You'll notice that the refrigerator is in the same exact spot. All right. The stove and the microwave is the same exact spot. So you can change the range to microwave very easily. And then the dishwasher and the sink also in the same exact spot. So nothing has changed, and we didn't move any plumbing or electrical around to accommodate for new locations for the appliances. All right, let's go through a minor rehab. Now, this is a house that we did in Arlington that was built in the 1950s. When we went in, things were very odd here, and this kitchen was very small. All right, it was roughly a 10 by 10 foot kitchen, and you can tell here that things end with this stove and this door, which looks very odd. You have a dishwasher. All right, it's kind of weird because the sink is on top of the dishwasher. I have no idea how that works, okay? But somehow they creatively put a sink with a dishwasher in the same area. So this sink is obviously not a deep sink. It's a very, very, low sink. And then to accommodate the dishwasher there. So it's very odd and looks really, really, really weird, okay? So obviously we need to relocate a lot of things around. So here's what we did. Here's what the house looked like on the outside. The kitchen, all right, is actually in the back of this living room right here. It's a very small space. What we notice here is this side right here was a little workshop that the previous owner used, and it was not heated or it was not cool. There was no HVAC, no plumbing, no nothing on that side, but it was a perfect spot to move a kitchen over there, and that's what we decided to do, okay? So what we did was we opened up the whole wall on the old kitchen to open up that one section where there used to be a workshop. So we knocked down the wall and then built out this space here to make it finished space. We put ductwork there, we put plumbing there, and we put electrical there to be able to house a new kitchen. All right. So you see from the back view, this spot right here that used to be a workshop, all right, now has new siding, and that's where the new kitchen is going to be. Okay. And that's what it looks like when it's all done. So a little bit bigger than a 10 by 10 kitchen. It looks a lot nicer. There's a nice island. All the appliances are in the right spots. All right. And the ceiling height is actually really nice. And along with the backsplash, even a little desk area over here, because with extra space, put some additional cabinet space. Okay. So that's an example of a minor rehab where we had to move one wall in this particular instance, and also go ahead and relocate all the plumbing and electrical and also HVAC ducts to accommodate this new kitchen design. All right. So let's go through an example of a major rehab. All right. And this is a house in DC that was built in 1910. Okay. So it's over 100 years old when we looked into it. Now on the surface, it looks really nice. Okay. You got these walls here and it looks, doesn't look anything out of the ordinary, but we know better as professional rehabbers. We know the house was built in 1910. There's going to be skeletons in the closet. Okay. So we negotiate it as if it's a major rehab because of the year built. And we know for a fact that there's no major renovation other than changing things on the surface, changing the appliances and change the cabinets, that's all cosmetic, right? Changing the laminate flooring down here, that's all cosmetic. But behind the walls, we have no idea what they've done, okay? So here's what happened. When we went ahead and started demolition, this is where the kitchen was, all right? And we wanted to open up the wall here to have open concept, finding out later behind the wall was a fireplace that they covered up. We had no idea there was a fireplace over there, all right, until we opened up the walls. And obviously, we had to remove the fireplace. Also, the floor joist that holds up the flooring was very rotted. There was termite damage. There was water damage. It looked really bad from a structural standpoint. So we went ahead and had to restore and replace those structural joists as well to be hold up the main level. And also, to add insult to injury, once we removed the joist, we found a big old crack in the foundation here. So my guys over here, actually, we had to dig a little trench over here to pour down footers to support that foundation. So that way it doesn't sink any further. So that way the house can structurally be sound after it's all said and done. Okay? So when we did the rehab, we tore everything apart, and this is during the construction here. All new framing. All right, we built around the gas pipes and the gas meter. But you can tell here that this house was built in 1910, guys. The wood that goes from the flooring all the way to the ceiling, all right, that's wood that we sistered together. And they don't make 2x4s like this anymore. In fact, these were not even 2x4s. They're like 2.5 by 4.5s, all right? They're very thick, and they're 40 feet long. All right, you cannot buy 40 feet long 2x4s anymore anywhere, and and so they were pretty long, but they were in great working order, so we kept them because that wood was actually really good. We just bought new two 2x4s to be able to do the framing all around the main level and also the second level. Okay, so we had to hold all the structures in place, and this is a picture of the floor of the main level of the floor plan. Once everything was framed out along with the ceiling, okay, for the second level. And then there's the same exact angle, but when everything's done, we have new hardwood, we have new kitchens. Obviously, all the walls have been removed. We decided to put an HVAC wall over here, all right, where the mechanicals, the hot water heater and the HVAC air handler system was there, because that's where the gas meter was. And then we went ahead and moved the kitchen all the way in the back, so that way there will be a window that faces the backyard. So when people do dishes, they can see the backyard, okay? So that's an example of a major rehab, all right? And it was a very expensive project, but we budgeted extra time for that, an extra 2 months to be able to take care of that renovation. So here's a couple of examples that we have done, what we did sight unseen at renovation, and then what the actual renovation costs were, okay? So this is a house we did last year in 24th Place Southeast. It was roughly 1,250 square feet for the entire house, including the basement. We assumed it was going to be a major rehab because the house was built in 1940. So with a major rehab, $58 per square foot, the estimate came out to be roughly $72,000. Well, because the house had a lot of junk in there, we literally had to have 4 or 5 dumpsters just to haul away all the junk. And that's before the demolition debris, okay? We had to redesign the floor plan in the basement a little bit, add a new bathroom, add an egress window, and also add a driveway and repair a deck. Now, adding a driveway is not included in a $58 per square foot, all right? But, you know, that's the reason why the actual cost was a little bit higher than our estimated cost. And that's actually in the ballpark because it's within 10% margin of what the estimate was. And we want that 10% margin in there so that way we can go ahead and do things like adding a driveway or adding egress window that we would not have normally thought of at the beginning. Okay, so here's an example that it was in the ballpark. It overran a little bit, but it's in the ballpark. All right, here's a house within Falls Church. This house was built in 1958, I believe, in the late 1950s. It was 2,000 square feet, a Rambler. It was a minor rehab, $44 a square feet. So you take a look at the numbers here, 2,000 times $44 a square foot was $88,000, okay? Well, what we did was we had to add a master bathroom. We had to redesign the floor plan to accommodate for a new breakfast area and also move the appliances around to make it more functional. Now, our actual cost was actually less than what the original estimate was, $75,000, because we did not have to change the roof. We did not have to change the HVAC. And also the hardwood did not need to be replaced. So all those things we found in there, we did not have to replace. All we did was service the HVAC and power wash the roof. So that doesn't cost much money at all. So because we didn't have to change those big ticket items, we were able to save money in that renovation. So here's an example where we underran on the actual renovation estimate that we actually had before we had for sight unseen. Okay, so there's an example of a minor rehab. Now, what I want to do now, guys, is introduce one of my good buddies who've been with our team for the last 2 or 3 years or so, actually a little bit longer than that. And he's been a big asset for us with regards to doing big projects, especially out in DC. And his knowledge about condo conversions and structures and things to negotiate with has been really, really beneficial. Okay, so I want to go ahead and bring on the founder of Capworks LLC, Mr. Jeremy Nix. And Mr. Nix, I believe you're still muted out. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me, Jan?
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Perfect. Thanks for the intro. As Jan mentioned, I own Capworks. We're a full-service construction company. We operate out of DC. We do large-scale rehabs, condo conversions, new builds, anything you can think of, but just in DC. So what we're going to talk about in tandem to what Jan was mentioning about renovations is we're going to go into a little bit further detail on some of the things that you can look at, that's definitely going to be outside of those parameters as far as your square footage costs. So we'll just kind of dive right in. So this is kind of what it's about. So what to look for, at your initial home inspection whenever you go out on site and you're viewing the property. A little bit about that. So we're going to go in and we're going to start talking about just various structural issues that you'll find in the area. Most of this stuff is going to be inside the Beltway, as those homes are a little bit older. As you tend to come outside the Beltway, they're hit or miss. Things a little bit newer in some cases, but nonetheless. So what you'll find in some of these older homes, uneven and sloped floors, deflecting cinder block walls, sheared cinder block walls, out of square door frames, substantial cracking, substantial cracking at interior drywall and plaster, improperly placed installed columns, termite damage, floor ceiling joists. So it goes on and on and on about the things that that we're going to find here and discuss. So here's an example of your sloping or sinking footings, or however you want to word it. There's so many different terminologies out there, but ultimately what this is showing here is this is a deflecting wall or floor system on a property. So you'll see that you have some cracked walls that the arrows are pointing at, which kind of leads you to believe that there's probably going to be some footer issues, or at the very least, some type of a cracked joist or something down along those lines. It's evident that you can see that whenever you're walking in the property. A lot of times you'll be able to feel it just as you walk across it, but also there's visual aids as well. And you can see that if you look at the baseboard in the top left corner. It's very tight at the inside corner to the left. And then as it slopes over to the door on the right, you can start to see where the gap opens up. So those little things like that, as you're walking through a property, those are kind of telltale signs that, hey, this is potentially going to be more than the original square footage number that Nhan mentioned previously. Also, you have deflecting cinder block walls. A lot of times that's a drainage issue. And what ends up happening is the water from downspouts and such collect there, and ultimately it just creates additional pressure and deflects the wall and end up structurally compromising the property. Here's another example of kind of how that works. So on your footing settlement or your wall movement on the left hand side, so as you can see, there's a floor crack on the slab, which ultimately could just be a cracked concrete slab, but it could also mean that your footer's sinking a little bit as well. So it's just one of those things that you want to be aware of as you walk through. Same thing on the other slide as well. It's just a similar wall, right, or a similar view to where it shows you, where the actual vertical wall itself separates, at face value versus shearing off. It separates this way. Moving on. Here's a more detailed view of the deflecting cinder block wall. So you can see the sheared cinder block wall there. Ultimately, what ends up happening is you have all of the pressure that comes up from outside with the water and everything else. Everything just compacts down through there. The soil erodes, and ultimately it just has all of that pressure put against the wall, which causes it to deflect and to break there. So again, it's one of those things that you definitely want to be aware of whenever you're walking a property. Again, another telltale sign is if the doors are out of square. You can see at the top of the door. You can see daylight at the top. Typically, you shouldn't. Everything should be pretty square, pretty even. Again, kind of the examples of some potential structural type issues. Some of this is settlement. Some of it could be structural. It's just one of those things that you definitely want to be aware of. So here's another example of things that you'll see on the left-hand side, improperly placed columns. There's no reason to have 3 columns within approximately 10 feet of one another. Something's going on there. And then on the other side, you have the just the random column in the basement. It just doesn't make any sense. So whenever you're seeing something that doesn't make any sense, they're probably trying to fix something that they couldn't understand. Again, here's an example of some termite damage. Ultimately, what happens is, the termites like moisture. So around leaky windows, around exterior areas where, you can see wood rot on the outside, depending on how long it's been there, it could be affected on the inside as well. Also, whenever you see, floor system, if you're in the basement, you're looking up to the unfinished ceiling, and you see a bunch of wood that's been cut out to allow for, pipes or wires or whatever the case may be, odds are that's not good, especially when huge chunks of it are taken out. Because if you can imagine, that's ultimately what you're walking on the first floor. So you can see on the other photo how it shows how the holes have been bored. Their proper spacing along with the plumbing specs there for code. So then we'll talk about some stuff that we've seen over the course of the past several years of things that just don't make sense. And here's some of the HVAC, electrical, and plumbing things that we've seen, and stuff that you should definitely be aware of as you go out and about. So if you have an elevated toilet, if there's a platform that you have to go sit on to do your business, it's not because it's a throne. It's literally because somebody just didn't take the time to properly install the groundworks plumbing to make it proper to where the actual toilet sits flush on the slab versus being elevated. So ultimately what's underneath that is the plumbing pipe and the connection. You can see on the left-hand side of the platform, there is a plumbing connection there, and they've just opted to elevate it. The next photo is asbestos wrapped plumbing pipes. Whenever you see that type of materials on there, it's just the ultimate cost of abating asbestos, depending on what it is. It's not as significant as you think. However, it could be a good negotiation tactic while, whenever you're speaking to a potential seller, that, hey, this has got asbestos, this is going to be an additional remediation cost, and it's going to vary based off of the severity of it. So once you have somebody come in, you just really don't know. So again, it's just one of those things that you can work into your purchasing discussions. So here is the difference between a current panel and an older panel. So on the right-hand side, that is the current panel with all the proper breakers, the main shut off, so on and so forth. And on your left-hand side is the older electrical panels that have the old fuse knobs, which basically means that once those things break, you have to pull it out and put a new one in and replace it, which is definitely the old way of doing things. Again, you'll see circuits, you'll see plugs whenever you walk through a house. If you don't see the third hole for the outlet, that means that the outlets aren't grounded, which means there's going to be some electrical issues whenever you go to home inspection. It'll ultimately come up that this doesn't have a ground, and it'll be something that you'll have to have a conversation about. So you definitely want to bring that up with your contractor. So an adequate panel, you can see how there's additional space below to where you can add additional circuits as needed. So here is some water damage and some things that we found. So the bottom left-hand corner, again, it's mildew on a CMU or a cinder block wall. CMU wall is what they call that. It's concrete masonry unit, is the stacked bricks that are gray there. So as I mentioned earlier, water is a big problem for any structure ultimately. But as in this one, you can tell that on the middle picture, the far right, you can tell that it's coming from the inside corner. So ultimately, whenever you go around and you look at your house the next time you come home, notice where the downspouts are. They're typically at the corner of your property. So that's where you'll find a lot of water infiltration issues, is they'll show up in the corners because that's where the downspouts are. And most of those things can be resolved by just diverting your downspouts away from the home. Again, you'll see that these are the old oil tank here. Back early on, they used the oil tanks. They had a whole boiler system. So if you see stuff like that, ultimately you're going to need to do an upgrade. And then obviously you'll know how to if there's a flooding issue or potential water intrusion on the property, there are remediation processes for it, and they're not horribly expensive, but there are some costly ones out there. It's just going to depend on the specific situation. But Again, you can waterproof an existing property by installing a perimeter drain and a sump pump. Again, this is another example of the older mechanical systems. Even though the one on the left is new, you can upgrade and make it the new way and try to use the old systems. However, odds of trying to find somebody that can work on that stuff, slim to none. And if you do, it's going to be super expensive and probably a long time to get on their schedule. Another notable thing whenever you're walking a property is clearance issues. These are some of the things that we'll talk about here. Egress windows. If you're trying to list a property and it's in the basement and all you have is a little 2-foot by 1-foot window, ultimately that is not a bedroom in today's code. Ultimately, you have to have an egress window for it to be called a bedroom. And here's an example of what that looks like. Headroom clearances. This is a big one here on the stairwells. A lot of times the property that you'll be dealing with on these types of circumstances is a rambler. A lot of times they'll run a beam right through the middle. And a lot of times the stairs start from the outside or from the back of the house and go towards the middle, or go from the front towards the middle. So what you have to watch out for is where your head, as illustrated on there, hits as you're walking through there. You have to have a minimum of 6 foot 8 inches in order to actually finish the space and call it habitable finished space. Moving on, some clearances for toilets and plumbing fixtures. Ultimately, you have to have 30 inches clearance between a tub and a vanity. So ultimately, anywhere between there, you have to have 15 inches ultimately to the center line of the toilet. There are minimum spaces in front of your vanities, in front of your toilets. So if you're having to shuffle through, to get into your bathroom, odds are you're going to have some troubles. If you're keeping it the same way, you're going to have some troubles finding new fixtures to accommodate that, or potentially may have to just relocate some of the stuff to even bring it up to code. It just depends on how far you're going with renovation. Here's some other things that you have to be aware of: lead-based paint, the asbestos tile, and some other costly things, nicotine discoloration. If you walk in, you smell smoke, from people smoking in there. If they had a pet. So here's an example of some flaking lead paint on your left. It shows how it just aged, and that's what lead paint does, is it flakes. It doesn't peel, it flakes. And then you have the 9x9 asbestos tile. That is very, very common. Again, it's one of those factors that has to be considered whenever you're going in to negotiate a deal, because there is a remediation expense that's involved with removing that product. However, we've had significant experience with this, and ultimately, as long as the tile is in full or in good condition, like as these are shown, ultimately you can cover them up, meaning that if you're going to put carpet down there, you can go ahead and put a pad down there and then put your carpet over top of it. When you have to remediate, if one of those tiles were broken and the inside contents of the tile is exposed, and that's where you get your asbestos from there. Same thing, the 9x9 asbestos tile. It's very common in the DMV. And again, it's one of those things that a lot of people don't know and don't realize. And again, whenever you're walking through there, it's a pretty common thing you'll see. Same thing with nicotine. If somebody smoked in the property for years and years and years, I've seen it a lot. Ultimately you pull the pictures off the wall, and it'll be the original wall color, and everything else is this yellowy, sticky, nasty substance. So it's just one of those things to where if you see that on windows, you see it on walls, those types of things, ultimately it's the ductwork. If you're planning on just, keeping the ductwork, maybe just upgrading the actual system itself, the furnace, the condenser, however, whatever the setup is, you might not expect that you might have to potentially replace the ductwork or, spend a lot of money on the, the cleaning of that, because it once it's there, it's there. It's hard to remove. And again, same thing with subfloor. Whenever you're doing a renovation, if you think about it in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal to cut that piece of floor out with the subfloor and replace it, as opposed to just spraying something on it. I'm always from the camp of, let's just cut it out and replace it, so that way we know that it's new, we know that it's fresh, we know that even though we do put this, concoction over the top of it, it doesn't matter. It's we've replaced it. It's good. We don't have the potential smell, because it will seep through eventually. And then here's an image of what I was referring to before with the nicotine on the walls. Those people have smoked in there for a long, long time. And that pretty much brings us to the end of my presentation. I appreciate everybody's time and logging in. I hope everybody stays safe. And if you need anything, we're at capworksllc.com, CAPWORX. Thanks again, Nhan.
Awesome, Jeremy. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? All right. All right, good stuff, guys. So what we're going to do now is go back to our original presentation, and Jeremy will stay on for the questions later on. All right, so you can see here his knowledge as a contractor is very valuable. And, I consider myself very knowledgeable when it comes to look for things to negotiate as well. However, when you have two minds come together, it does come up with a better thing. So I like to say 1 + 1 equals greater than 2, and that's something called synergy when you have great team members on your team. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to our questions section now, and these questions now can can be addressed to either myself or Jeremy. So Nicholas, I turn it over to you, so that way we can get to the questions. Okay. Nicholas,
Yes.
you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So the first question is from, let's see here, Adjo Gonzalez. They ask, how do you compute the square feet?
Okay. So once you get the data from the county website as a tax assessment, you can go ahead and take a look at what the livable square footage is. That usually includes the main level and also the upper level, and also what the square footage is in the basement. Okay. So remember, you gotta include both of them, because the livable square footage does not include the basement. And what you want to do is assume that you're going to be working in all the spaces in that property. So let's say the upper level is 1,000 square feet. It's a rambler with the basement. So you know for a fact that the basement is probably 1,000 square feet as well. You add those two together, you have 2,000 square feet. So going on the county website, make sure you get the square footage for the livable square footage, which is the main level and everything above that. You add it to the basement square footage, then you have the total square footage that you use to estimate your renovation site on need. Okay.
All right, and Miss Elaine Van Poel asks, she actually has 2 questions. What is the best way to approach a seller if you are interested in a rent with option to buy?
Rent with option to buy? Okay, well, if this is more of a personal thing, or maybe someone, then it really depends on from a rent to buy perspective. First of all, why would an owner want to do that, right? First of all, they gotta not need money right away. So if they own the house outright, or maybe they have equity in the house, they gotta not need that money right away. Okay, and so if that's the case, that's good. And then the next thing you gotta cross then is if they're trusting you. So if you're gonna rent it, let's say $2,000 per month or $1,500 per month, and what's in it for them to let you rent and then defer the actual ownership later on? Are you going to take care of the property? Are you actually going to rebuild your credit? The only reason why people rent to buy is because they're going to spend that time rebuilding their credit, or maybe they're not in position to do it yet because they're still waiting on a better job, a better income, or whatever that may be. Okay, you have to sell to the seller who does not need money right away, that yes, this is in their best interest, and I can go ahead and buy this house as long as I rebuild my credit and have a pre-qualified mortgage to buy the house. So that's the best way to approach that. And also, you have to ask yourself, why would they do it, right? The main reason why they would do it is if they're single, all right, they're not married, and this house was a primary residence for them, and the capital gains they get is more than $250,000. If they're going to actually get more than that for capital gains, then it's in their best interest to defer the actual sale of the property until maybe later on, when they break it up into multiple, multiple intervals of them getting a down payment from you so that way they can declare the capital gains in multiple years, and maybe it won't impact their taxes all in 1 year at once. All right. So, I'm not a CPA, but that's my take on that, and I've negotiated that stuff in the past. But me personally, I've really never negotiated a rent to buy before. But what I do know is that when we do negotiate, we have to ask ourselves, what's in it for them? Why would they do that? And are they in position to that to even consider that? Okay. So hopefully that answers that first question. Was there a second one to that?
Yes. The next one is, what type of identification should you show or prove so seller feels comfortable in doing business with you?
Okay. So if it's related to the rent to own type deal, then then you got to show that you can afford what you can afford, right? The rent is, again, $1,500 a month. Yeah, show that you can afford that. Show a W-2, show a pay stub, show that you're legal. Show a driver's license. Yes, you can show a driver's license for credibility. But if you're going to do it from an investor standpoint, then maybe you're finding a place to rent to buy for somebody on behalf of them. Then you guys show that you're a credible investor, right? Do you have a company email address? Do you have a company website? Do you have a portfolio of success? If you don't yet, do you have a website that shows credibility, right? The biggest thing is that if the seller doesn't know you, are you credible or not, right? And you have to find a way to make yourself credible, so that way they can trust you, and that way they can believe in you and know that they can depend on you to pay rent or pay whatever is needed in the terms of the contract. Okay, so hopefully that answered that question.
Okay, and this question is for either of you. For flooring and renovations, when would you recommend using luxury vinyl planks, and when would you go with hardwood or engineered?
Okay, so Jeremy, I think I'm going to piggyback on you on this one, but let me answer the first part. Is whatever finishes that you guys decide, what I would recommend is you want to look at the neighborhood to see what sells and what sells fast. If it sells fast, and that's probably the material that you want to choose. You want to choose the thing that's in that neighborhood, and not the things that you personally like. You got to get your personal emotions out of it, choosing finishes. So, so how about you, Jeremy? What have you found about that material selection, and when would you use it?
It kind of goes in line with what you were saying earlier with the scale of the renovation and what your exit is. Ultimately, the ARV is going to determine that, or other comps in the neighborhood are going to determine ultimately the finishes that you put in, as Nhan mentioned. Our approach is always kind of appeal to the masses. You want it to be in. As far as current trends and that type of thing. However, you don't want it to be too specific to where it's outside the box, and it's going to be too hard for people to wrap their head around a red island, just for an example.
Okay, great stuff. All right, Nicholas, let's go to the next question.
Okay, and Cindy Sosa asks, how can you tell whether the cracks are due to settlement and not structural, or vice versa?
Okay, I think, Jeremy, you can take that one.
Okay. So I guess the question was, how do you know the difference between structural cracks and settlement cracks? Is that correct?
Yes.
So ultimately, you'll know the difference. Number one, a settlement crack, you'll usually see the tape itself from the drywall maybe that's exposed. Usually where there's structural cracks, it's more like I displayed on there. It's around the areas that are square, like the door areas. Those are typically square. So you're going to notice if something is shifted. So that's really going to where you're going to find your difference. Like if you see something on the ceiling and it's just a crack and it's pretty straight, odds are it's a seam in the drywall. However, there are some older properties that have the plaster and last, and those are going to be a little bit more evident and a little bit more. It's going to be a little harder to determine on the plaster.
Okay, and Jeremy, this question is for you as well. What's a good rule of thumb for estimation asbestos remediation for tile, flooring, and popcorn ceiling?
So the tile remediation, it's ultimately going to depend on the surface area. I can give you an example of my experience with it. Ultimately, it's a minimal cost. You'll usually find it in mechanical rooms a lot, and ultimately that's where our situation was. and we remediated, and I believe it was $1,500 is what it cost us to actually have an outside company come in and take care of it.
Okay, and Alicia Hill asks, are these estimates good for multifamily building renovations as well?
Okay, so that's a good question. Multifamily meaning like a building with hundreds of units or maybe 5 units, and it depends, right? So if you're going to be doing a multifamily building with hundreds of units, the economy of scale will come into place, because when you use the contractor, these numbers are going to be a little bit more higher on the higher end, right? Because if you're going to be doing, let's say, 100 apartments over time, then that should be a lot cheaper over time, because you'll be buying materials in bulk, and your contractor now has a big contract and she'll give you a bulk discount, right? So, but if it's like a 2-unit building or a 3-unit building, then you don't really have you may have room to negotiate a little bit. So let's say your total renovation, if it was 1 unit, it's going to be, let's say, $25,000, and you have 3 of them, that's $75,000. Most likely, because you're doing all 3 at once, then maybe you can negotiate with your contractor, say, hey, can you give me a quantity discount or something like that, right? Because you'll be buying.
Jan, you're killing me.
What's that?
Jan, you're killing me.
Hey, I'm sorry, I'm an investor. All right. But that's the thing, though. You gotta ask yourself, what's in it for the contractor? All right. What's in it for the contractor is that now there are 3 jobs in one, where they don't have to market for new jobs. It's 1 location. All right. And it's 3 multiple projects with a higher bid. And the higher the bid, the more money they can potentially make. And that will allow them to give reason for maybe to give you some kind of quantity discount, maybe on the materials at least, because they're going to buy the appliances and things at a bulk discount from their supplier, right? So potentially there is some cost savings there. However, if you're going to be doing multi-family building, you can use our numbers as a good rule of thumb to begin with, knowing that if you have more than 1 unit, it's going to be much more conservative, and you probably have room to negotiate with. Okay.
Okay. All right, and Mr. Aaron Rogers asks, what would the remedy be for a property that has a crawl space that's too small for someone to fit in?
Okay, great question. No, Jeremy, I'll give it to you. You're a bigger guy than me.
So the question was, I'm sorry, Nicholas, could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, of course. He said, what would the remedy be for a property that has a crawl space that's too small for someone to fit in?
So ultimately what you could do, they have crawl space renovations, which is, kind of what the general construction term is for it, meaning that, you could go in, you could put in a perimeter drain to assist with any type of water that's coming into the property. And then ultimately what they would do, or what we would do, is like I said, put in a perimeter drain. You could put in gravel, and then put in a vapor barrier along with insulation on the floor system to completely encapsulate that. That's typically what you would do in those types of situations. If anything, it just depends on what's there and what's working. But if you're asking for what you do with a crawl space that you can't really do much with, you can do as I just described, and it's at least a place that they could store things. So it could be more of a dry storage. As far as excavating the thing out, and putting in an actual full-on cellar or basement, that's really a tough one to say without seeing something. But it's going to be expensive. We'll just put it at that.
Okay, but let me add to that also. For if their concern is that, hey, people can't really fit in there to do any kind of work, like if they have to run plumbing or run insulation or do something there. I've done some houses with crawl spaces, and I have never had a contractor not be able to fit in there. So if there's work that needs to be done, they'll find a way to get it done, whether if they had to dig a hole temporarily to get in and then fill back up, or do something just to get in and get access to it. So, there's always going to be a way to get in. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. If it's too small for someone to fit in, there's always a crawl space access that's required by code. You need to be able to inspect it. So whether it be going in with a flashlight, taking a couple pictures real quick and leaving, that's fine, because you can really quickly see the floor joists and see if there's any structural damage. any water damage or any water sitting in the actual dirt of the crawl space, that's a big red flag. You see water sitting there, right? Water should not be sitting there because moisture builds up. You may have mold growing in the crawl space and all that nice stuff, right? Pests and insects will be attracted to that and all that nice stuff. So, yes, there's always going to be a way for someone to be able to get access to the crawl space. And if not, for whatever reason, then what our people have done is gone through from the main level. They literally had to tear out the plywood and the flooring to come in from the top going down. So there's that way as well. If there is no easy access, you can always create an access during the renovation. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't understand the question, but that was exactly right, Jan. I'm actually doing that on 3 projects right now. I don't know why I didn't even think about that, but that was probably what the question was.
You're probably thinking of sending me in there because I'm short and 5'3". I can fit in anything.
Okay, guys, we got 2 more questions.
Okay, go ahead.
So from Mr. Carlos Bordillo, he says, "Hi, Jeremy. What is your average time frame for a rehab from start to finish? Let's use a 800 square feet house, simple rehab."
On a what scale of rehab?
Yeah, simple rehab. So just replacing everything in the same location.
Yeah.
Oh, you said 800 square foot?
Yeah.
Maybe 3 to 4 weeks.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so maybe 3 to 4 weeks. If it's just pulling it out and putting it back, a coat of paint, maybe some flooring. Yeah, 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay, but 1,800 square feet, not 800.
Still, yeah. I mean, it's still the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest time is that if you have to add stuff or replace plumbing, like you have to add a bathroom, that's going to take time, right? If you have to add bedroom and add an egress window, that's going to take time. But if you just simple in and out with cosmetic and remodeling as is, it does not take long at all.
Well, the thing of it is that you don't open a can of worms potentially that you have to resolve and you weren't prepared or budgeting for.
Right.
Also, along with that, on the simple rehab, where you're just pulling it out and putting it back and replacing it, you don't need permits for that.
Right.
So that's a whole nother process that you have that you can circumvent, by scaling back your rehab. And also what that does is it enlarges the pool of contractors that you can feel comfortable with using. Because if you think about it, if you're going in and you're doing a condo conversion, that requires all of this upfront, paperwork and coordination and everything else, odds are you're probably going to want somebody that understands that process, has been familiar with it, or is at least professional enough to understand how to navigate through it. Whereas, a lot of the guys in the back of the truck, they're not going to be able to assist with that. So their prices are a little bit different, right? So if you're just doing something where you're pulling it out and replacing it, the guy that's actually going to be installing the cabinets is going to be the guy that's probably negotiating the deal with you.
Right.
Versus, somebody like me, I have a staff and a team that helps me out and does a lot of different things, So, yeah, it's just like Jan mentions, it's economies of scale.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
The last question that we have is from Jennifer Bond. She asks, "Are you adjusting your anticipated margin of profit in any way due to COVID? And if so, how or what are you doing differently?"
Okay, great question. From a renovation estimate perspective, I'm not doing anything different. In fact, some contractors are having difficulty getting work for whatever reason. Now, not work from investors, but work from the regular homeowners market, right? So with that, some people are looking for work. So we're still having, our renovation estimates are having the same. They haven't really adjusted that much at all. What we have adjusted though is we're negotiating a little bit better because of the uncertainty. So anytime there's uncertainty in the marketplace, whether it's stock market, whether it be a pandemic or a national crisis, when people are worried or scared, that's when you can negotiate better, right? Because people act on emotion, right? And the biggest driving emotion to give people to take action is fear. So with that fear right now, we are negotiating more aggressively and explaining why. And we don't know what's going to happen during the presidential election this year. We don't know what's going to happen with COVID-19. We don't know what's going to happen, how we're going to show the house when we finish the actual renovation. We don't know a lot of things, right? There's a lot of uncertainty. And that's why we have to negotiate a better number here to account for those uncertainties. If you say something like that, it just makes sense for them. And they said, okay, well, I guess I can't get more out of this. So let me go ahead and agree to your price. But that's what we've done to negotiate. So hopefully that can that helps answer your question.
Yeah, in addition to that, Jan, What also ends up happening on the contractor side of things, and what we're experiencing right now is while we are an essential essential staff, some of the suppliers that we get our products from are non-essential, meaning that I know that we're having a problem right now getting windows, for example. The window manufacturers, they have, the ones that we get from have let their staff, they're at home while the pandemic's going on. They're not essential. So, it's one of those things to where you may experience, construction delays, because whereas typically we could get windows in a week, now it's taking a month. And it's the same thing with doors and trim. That's another problem that we've been experiencing as well. Similar time frame delays.
Okay. That's a great point. I mean, I did forget to mention one of my landscapers for a property was having trouble getting sod. Okay. The odd thing is, sod farm, I mean, you're still growing grass, you're still growing food, but they're having trouble getting access to sod for whatever reason. So, yes, there is a little adjustment with supply and materials availability. So you probably want to adjust your project time frame a little bit longer than usual just to account for those things, which we have done as well. Okay. All right. So, Nicholas, are there any more questions?
No, it looks like that's it.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you very much. Let me go ahead and go to the next thing here. And we're gonna go ahead and go through the raffle now. And it's a chance for anyone here on the line tonight to be able to win a 30-minute free mentorship session with Fortune Homes. So I'm gonna turn that over to Ari, who's gonna be going through the Wheel of Fortune Homes, I guess. So Ari, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go right ahead.
Hi, everyone. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our Fortune Homes team raffle. It's kind of funny to hear Wheel of Fortune. I hope you guys enjoyed this virtual meetup. So here we go. Good luck to whoever is chosen. Congratulations, Yvonne. I will go ahead and get your contact information through our sign-up sheet before you enter this meetup, and I will contact you regarding what you would be winning, which would be a 30-minute session with Nhan. So please put on your email, and I will be contacting you soon.
All right, wonderful. Thank you very much, Ari. So, it's funny because Wheel of Fortune, we happen to be Fortune Homes, and Yvonne Carr, I believe you attended one of our boot camps before a long time ago, and you may have moved out of state now, but we would love to have a mentorship session with you in hopes you get you started in your marketplace, okay? Let's go on to the final, a couple of the final slides real quick to tell you what's in store for you guys next couple of months here. And where is the slide? Okay, there it is. So now we want to let you guys know that we successfully launched our virtual platform for Nhan Lam Academy a couple of weeks ago. And we had so much demand that we actually filled up a room. A lot of people couldn't get in. So that's why we're going to be doing another grand opening. And I'm sorry, it's not Wednesday. It's actually Tuesday, May the 12th. Okay, Tuesday, May the 12th. The event is free. You can register on nhanlamacademy.com. And you should be seeing a little button on top here soon for you to be able to click on that. And please do RSVP now so that way you secure your spot before it's sold out again. We're going to go through a 4-step system to making your first $100,000 part-time in real estate, okay? And yes, part-time, and yes, you can do it in the comfort of your home and still account for the social distancing requirements and also the current environment of the pandemic that's going on, COVID-19. And definitely, you want to get educated now so you can take advantage of this crisis because, guys, every so often there is a national crisis. And the people who make the most money are the ones who are educated enough to take action and the right action based on the stuff that they know. And the people who fall behind, who actually get poorer, are the ones who either take no action or have no knowledge on recognizing the opportunity as it sits right there in front of their lap because they did not know. Okay, so make sure you go to our website, nhanlamacademy.com, RSVP to the May 12th event. Again, it's Tuesday, not Wednesday. I apologize for the typo there. We're going to go through the 4-step system that we have personally used to making your first $100,000 per year part-time. Okay, we definitely like us on Facebook at Fortune Homes Team. Okay, and then next month on our meetup on Wednesday, June the 3rd, where our topic is going to be multifamily investing. We also have another great guest speaker And he's none other than Mr. Daniel Woodford. We've known him for the last 2 or 3 years now, and currently owns well over 2,000 units nationwide. Very successful individual, very humble, and very knowledgeable. And he's a very good friend of ours. And definitely do not miss this event if you're into multifamily investing, learning how to buy big apartment buildings, cash flow, and also raise the funding to be able to do a value adds for you to refinance and get cash out later on. So make sure you RSVP for the next meetup right now. All right, there's a little call to action on top right now. You go straight to the meetup site to RSVP. It will be virtual because in the state of Virginia, we still do have a lockdown until June the 10th as of now, but there is plans to reopen pretty soon here. But we're still going to be doing a virtual meetup on June the 3rd, okay? So with that, guys, thank you very much for joining us and having us here. And we look forward to seeing you guys next month at our next meetup. Thank you very much, and God bless.